Good morning, guys. So before going to start about course content, first I will give brief introduction about myself. Today our course name is DevOps with AWS Cloud. Coming to myself, Mr. Raju. Right, I'm having 12 plus years of working experience. I'm having 12 plus years of working experience. Currently, I am working as a senior technical specialist. Currently, I am working as a senior technical specialist. So, in my project, I am working as Java full stack Java developer, guys. Guys, I am not only DevOps engineer, I am not only cloud engineer. Along with this DevOps with AWS cloud, I am working for development also. That's why I told that I am working as a Java full stack developer. Coming to technical stack, what I am using in my current project. See, in my company, I'm working as a Java full stack developer. Right. Coming to technology stack, I'm using Java, Spring Boot, microservices, React.js, right? So DevOps operations, and AWS cloud. I will get to this, guys. Right. In my company, I'm working as a Java full stack developer. Coming to technology stack, all these technologies I'm using in my project. What technologies I'm using? Java I'm using, Spring Boot I'm using, microservices, React.js, DevOps operations, and AWS cloud. Guys, I'm not only DevOps with AWS engineer. Along with these things, I'm taking care of development also in my current project. So, in the DevOps and AWS, whatever the tools are available, whatever the services are available, all those things I can explain in detail with internals. Why? Because I am working in development side also. So most of the DevOps tools are developed by using Java only. Most of the DevOps tools are relevant to Java only. So that's why all the tools I can explain with internals. Okay, so this is brief about myself, guys. Right, myself, Raju, I am having 12 plus years of working experience. Still, I am working, guys. Still, I am working in the company. Currently, I am working as a senior technical specialist. In my project, I am working as Java full stack developer. Coming to technology stack, all these technologies I am using in my current project. Guys, if you attend for this DevOps with AWS cloud course, right, so only who is working on DevOps operations and AWS cloud, that is different. And if you attend, right, so for DevOps with AWS cloud, who is working as full stack developer, that is different, guys. Why? What is the difference here? If you attend, right, who is, right, if you attend, right, so if you attend for DevOps with AWS cloud, right, who is working on complete full stack development, so those people can explain all the tools and services with internals. Why? Because they have complete hands-on experience and development side also, so they can explain all the things with internals, guys. Okay, same thing you are going to get here also. I am the Java full stack developer. As the Java development full stack, I am a Java developer. I can work all the Java related tools and DevOps operations and AWS cloud services. So I can explain all these things with the internals. Okay. So this is brief about myself, please. Next, To attend for this course, is there any prerequisites? If you want to attend for DevOps with AWS Cloud, is there any prerequisites are available? Is there any prerequisites? Yes. Here, Linux commands are required. If you attend for this DevOps with AWS Cloud, you should know the basic Linux commands, guys. Basic Linux commands are required. Even if you don't know these Linux commands also, no problem. Why? And we are going to cover these Linux commands also in our sessions. So we are going to cover Linux commands also in our sessions. That's why I am going to keep prerequisites are nothing but prerequisites means nothing. Prerequisites means nothing, guys. Why I am keeping nothing, guys? To attend for this course, what are the prerequisites are there? All those prerequisites we are going to discuss in our course. That's why I mentioned as nothing, guys. Why I mentioned nothing? To attend for this course, what prerequisites are there? We are going to cover those prerequisites also in our regular sessions. That's why here I mentioned as nothing. And if you don't have anything about the DevOps, if you don't have anything about the Linux, if you don't have anything so about cloud, so no problem. Here we are going to discuss everything. That's why here I mentioned as nothing. Okay, so coming to course content. Guys. Here, the entire course content I have divided into multiple parts. The entire course content I have divided into multiple parts. We will discuss one by one. And as a part 1, what we are going to discuss. Observe carefully, guys. As a part 1, we are going to cover introduction of the DevOps. And as a part 1, we are going to cover introduction of the DevOps. Okay. Next here, as part 2, what we are going to cover. As part 2, we are going to discuss AWS services. As part 2, we are going to understand Linux and shell scripting. As part 2, we are going to cover Linux and shell scripting. So once part 2 is completed, we will move into part 3. So what we are going to discuss in part 3? In part 3, we are going to discuss AWS Cloud. And here in the AWS Cloud, how many services we are going to discuss? Here, almost we are going to discuss 20 plus services. 20 plus services we are going to discuss in the AWS Cloud. Guys, observe very carefully. In the AWS Cloud, we are going to cover 20 plus services. If you attend in other institutes, right, the AWS Cloud in the sense, they will cover almost 5 to 10 services only. Even if you attend for only AWS Cloud also, only AWS Cloud, not for DevOps with AWS Cloud, only AWS Cloud training also, they will cover hardly 12 to 15 services. But in our institute, if you attend for this DevOps with AWS Cloud, you are going to learn 20 plus AWS services. Okay, part 1, we are going to understand introduction of DevOps. Here we will cover what is DevOps, why DevOps is required, DevOps life cycle, what is software development life cycle, what methodologies are there in SDLC, what is waterfall methodology, what is agile methodology. In this SDLC process, where DevOps will involve, all those things we are going to understand in introduction of the DevOps case. So once it is done, we will move into part 2. In part 2, we are going to learn Linux operating system and shell scripting. And once this part 2 is completed, we will move into part 3. In part 3, we are going to understand AWS Cloud. How many services we are going to cover in the AWS Cloud? 20 plus services we are going to teach. Right? Next, after completing this part 3, we are going to move into part 4. In part 4, what we are going to discuss? Here, we are going to discuss DevOps tools. How many DevOps tools we are going to cover here? Almost 15 plus DevOps tools. Almost 15 plus DevOps tools we are going to cover it here. So once part 4 is completed, we will move to part 5. So what we are going to discuss in part 5? In part 5, we are going to discuss Python scripting. Python scripting, guys. See guys, nowadays for DevOps engineers, along with shell scripting, Python scripting also very important. In the companies, they are expecting Python scripting also, guys. If you attend for any interview, they will ask, do you know Python scripting? By using Python scripting, how to automate the things, do you know that? So they are asking such kind of questions. That's why for DevOps engineers, how much Python scripting is required, up to that level, I am going to cover it here. Next. Once part 5 is completed, I will move to part 6. What we are going to discuss in part 6? In part 6, we are going to cover 5 real-time projects. 5 real-time projects we are going to discuss. Guys, not 1 or 2. Not 1 or 2. We are going to discuss 5 real-time projects. End to end, 5 real-time projects we are going to discuss in part 6. Once part 6 is completed, we will move to part 7. So in part 7, what we are going to discuss? Interview guide. Interview guide. So what will come under this interview guide? What things will come under this interview guide, guys? Interview guide means here we are going to understand how to prepare the resume and how to keep the projects in resume, how to explain the roles and responsibilities in the interviews, interview questions, mock interviews, everything will come under this part 7. Guys, observe carefully. The entire course I have divided into multiple parts. Part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, part 6, part 7. How many parts we have divided entire course? 7 parts. We have divided the course into 7 parts, guys. So what is part 1? As part 1, we are going to learn introduction of the DevOps. In this introduction of the DevOps, what we are going to learn? Here, we are going to learn what is the DevOps first. Observe carefully here. What is DevOps? Right. Next, here we are going to understand why DevOps. Why DevOps? Next, DevOps life cycle. DevOps life cycle. Next, what is SDLC? What is SDLC? Software Development Life Cycle. Next, methodologies. Methodologies in SDLC. Next, waterfall methodology. Waterfall methodology. So next, agile methodology. Agile methodology. So all these things we are going to understand in part 1. This course content is very important. Please focus on this course content. As part 1, we are going to learn this introduction of the DevOps. In this part 1, we are going to cover all these things. What we are going to cover? What is DevOps? Why DevOps is required? DevOps life cycle. What is SDLC? What methodologies are available in SDLC? Waterfall methodology, agile methodology, all these things we are going to discuss in part 1. Next, coming to part 2. What is part 2? Part 2 is Linux operating system. Linux operating system and shell scripting. So what we are going to cover? In the part 2, we are going to discuss what is operating system. What is operating system? Next, right, what is Windows operating system? Right, Windows operating system. Windows operating system. So next we are going to cover Linux operating system. Linux operating system we will discuss. Next here, Windows versus Linux. Windows versus Linux. Windows versus Linux. Next, Linux commands. Linux commands. Next, shell scripting. Shell scripting. All these things we are going to discuss in part 2, guys. As part 2, we are going to understand Linux operating system and shell scripting. What we are going to cover in part 2, we are going to understand what is operating system, right? Windows operating system, Linux operating system, Windows versus Linux, Linux command, shell scripting. All these things we are going to cover in part 2. Coming to part 3, our actual content will start from here. Our actual course content will start from here, guys. Before this, we should understand very clearly about Linux operating system and shell scripting. Okay, coming to part 3, what we are going to discuss? We are going to discuss AWS Cloud. How many services we are going to cover? We are going to cover 20 plus services. Okay, before going to start the AWS services, first I will give brief introduction about cloud computing. That's why first we are going to learn what is cloud computing. What is cloud computing? Next, advantages of the cloud computing. Advantages of the cloud computing. Next is right. What is, how many ways cloud services are segregated? What are the different ways we have, right, cloud services, guys? Here we have infrastructure as service versus platform as a service versus software as a service. Software as service. All the cloud services are segregated in these 3 ways. Infrastructure as service, platform as service, software as service. If you go with infrastructure as service, what you need to take care and what cloud will take care. If you go with platform as service, what you need to take care, what cloud will take care. If you go with software as service, what you need to take care and what cloud will take care, all those things we are going to cover it here. Next, after completing this, I will talk about introduction of the AWS. Introduction of AWS. Next is, after this introduction of AWS cloud, I will talk about how to create the free tier account in the AWS. If you want to access AWS services, if you want to work with AWS services, compulsory you should have the account in the AWS. Here we are going to see how to create the free tier account in the AWS cloud. How to create free tier account in AWS cloud. How to create free tier account in AWS cloud. So next we will talk about overview of the AWS services. I will give brief overview of the AWS services, guys. Okay, so once it's done, I will talk about regions and availability zones. Regions and availability zones. See guys, so in the AWS cloud, before going to start the actual services, I will talk brief about the cloud computing. That's why I will start with what is cloud computing, what advantages we have with the cloud computing. Next, what is IaaS versus PaaS versus SaaS. Next, introduction of AWS cloud and how to create the free tier account in the AWS cloud and overview of the AWS services and regions and availability zones. Once all these things are completed, then we will move into actual AWS services. What services we are going to cover? As a first service, we will discuss EC2. EC2 stands for Elastic Compute Cloud. Elastic Compute Cloud. Next, we will talk about AMI. AMI stands for Amazon Mission Image. Amazon Mission Image. Next, we will talk about EBS. EBS stands for Elastic Block Storage. Elastic Block Storage. Right. Next, we will talk about ELB. ELB stands for Elastic Load Balancer. Elastic Load Balancer. Right. Next, we will talk about ASG. ASG stands for Auto Scaling Group. Auto Scaling Group. Right. Next, we will talk about Route 53. Route 53 we will discuss. After this, we will talk about S3. S3 stands for Simple Storage Service. Simple Storage Service. So then we will talk about RDS. Then we will talk about RDS. RDS stands for Relational Database. Relational Database we will discuss. So then we will talk about DynamoDB. DynamoDB as NoSQL database. NoSQL database. Then we will talk about very important concept, that is VPC. VPC stands for Virtual Private Cloud. Virtual Private Cloud we will discuss. So then we will talk about CloudWatch for monitoring purpose. CloudWatch we will discuss for monitoring purpose. So then we will talk about cloud formation. We will talk about cloud formation. What is this cloud formation? Cloud formation is a infrastructure as code service. Infrastructure as code. I means infrastructure, A means as, C means code. Infrastructure as code service. Next we will talk about SQS. SQS stands for Simple Queue Service. Simple Queue Service we will discuss. Then we will talk about SNS, Simple Notification Service. Simple Notification Service. So then we will talk about, after SQS and SNS, we will talk about ECS. ECS stands for Elastic Container Service. Elastic Container Service. Next we will talk about IAM. IAM stands for Identity and Access Management. Identity and Access Management. So then we will discuss about EKS, IAM. Next, we will talk about AWS CLI. AWS CLI. CLI stands for Command Line Interface. Command Line Interface. So then we will talk about serverless computing. Serverless computing. As serverless computing, we are going to understand lambdas. Lambdas we are going to discuss as serverless computing. So then we will talk about Elastic Beanstalk. Elastic Beanstalk. What is this Elastic Beanstalk? It is a PaaS service, platform as service. So next we will talk about EKS. EKS stands for Elastic Kubernetes Service. Elastic Kubernetes service. So, and we will talk about Terraform. This is very important. Guys, if you know only Terraform also, lot of openings are there in the market. Terraform is a main important tool, guys. Terraform is very important. If you keep Terraform in your project, then hundreds of companies will call you guys. So most of the companies are recruiting the people who knows Terraform very well. Here we are going to discuss Terraform in detail from basics to advanced level. Next we will talk about Ansible. Ansible we are going to discuss. Terraform is what, guys? Terraform is infrastructure as code tool. It is also one of the IAC only. What is this Ansible? Ansible is a configuration management tool. Configuration management tool. Okay, so next I will talk about some of the billing related information. Billing related information I will provide. See guys, so these are the services which we are going to talk in the AWS cloud. How many services we are going to cover? 20 plus services we are going to discuss. Before the services, I will start with introduction of the cloud computing. Guys, part 3, we are going to talk about AWS cloud. How many services we are going to teach? Like 20 plus services we are going to learn. Right, what services we are going to learn? EC2, AMI, EBS, ELB, ASG, Route 53, S3, RDS, DynamoDB, VPC, CloudWatch, CloudFormation, SQS, SNS, ECS, IAM, AWS CLI, serverless computing, Elastic Beanstalk, EKS, Terraform, Ansible, and some of the billing related information also I will share. So these are the services which we are going to cover in the AWS cloud. Guys, you can see, as I promised, we are going to discuss 20 plus AWS services. Next, I will come to for part 4. What we are going to discuss in part 4? In part 4, we are going to talk about DevOps tools. How many DevOps tools we are going to cover here? 15 plus DevOps tools we are going to cover. Okay, first we are going to talk about introduction of the DevOps tools. Introduction of DevOps tools we are going to discuss. Introduction of DevOps tools. Then we will talk about, as a DevOps engineer, what is your roles and responsibilities. Here we are going to discuss, as a DevOps engineer, what is your roles and responsibilities in the company. DevOps engineers, roles and responsibilities. DevOps engineers, roles and responsibilities we are going to understand. Next here, first tool in the DevOps, Maven, we are going to start. What is this Maven? Maven is a build tool. As a build tool, we are going to learn Maven. Earlier, people used to work with and also, but those two are outdated. Nowadays, in the companies, people are using to work with Maven or Gradle. So these two are the build tools which are using in the companies. Once this Maven is completed, then I will start with GitHub. GitHub. What is this GitHub? GitHub is a source code repository tool. Source code repository tool. As a source code repository tool, we are going to learn GitHub, guys. Next, we will talk about Jenkins. Here we are going to understand how to create the Jenkins CI/CD pipeline. What is Jenkins? Jenkins is a deployment tool. If you want to deploy the applications in the servers, then Jenkins must be required. By using Jenkins only, we will deploy the applications in the servers. Here we will understand how to create the CI/CD pipelines. pipelines, guys. CI/CD stands for continuous integration and continuous deployment. Next, we will talk about Sonar Cube. Sonar Cube we are going to discuss. What is this Sonar Cube? Sonar Cube is code review tool. Code review tool, guys. Before going to deploy the application in the server, we should review the code. How developers are written the code, whether they followed the coding standards or not, whether they written the unit test cases or not, all the unit test cases successfully executed or not, code coverage is above 80% is there or not, everything we need to verify. How you can verify all these things? Is it possible to check manually? No. That's why we are going to use some code review tools that is called Sonar Cube. By using Sonar Cube, we will review the code. Next, we are going to understand one web server also. We are going to understand one web server, that is Tomcat. Tomcat. What is Tomcat? Tomcat, right, we are going to understand as web server. Web server, guys. Okay. So next we are going to talk about Docker. Next we are going to understand Docker, guys. What is this Docker, guys? Docker is a containerization tool. Docker is a containerization tool, guys. Next we will talk about Docker Swarm. What is this Docker Swarm? Docker Swarm is a orchestration tool. But in the companies, we won't use a Docker Swarm. Why? In the Docker Swarm, we have some limitations are available. We have some limitations are there. To overcome those limitations, Kubernetes came into the picture. Kubernetes. Kubernetes, guys. What is this Kubernetes? Kubernetes also orchestration tool only. Instead of Docker Swarm, we are going to use Kubernetes in the companies. Guys, Kubernetes is very important. If you don't keep this Kubernetes in the resume, it is very difficult to shortlist your resume, guys. Kubernetes is that much important and it is a very vast subject, guys. Okay, but here we are going to discuss from very basic level to advanced level. So we are going to spend almost 30 hours on the Kubernetes. 30 hours means once Kubernetes is started, daily I will take 2 hours session. Right? If I take 2 hours session, I can complete this Kubernetes in 15 days. 15 days, I can close this Kubernetes, guys. So we are going to learn in detail from basic level to advanced on this Kubernetes, guys. Kubernetes is very important, guys. Okay, so after completing this Kubernetes, I will talk about some of the monitoring tools. Guys. What monitoring tools are available? Prometheus. Prometheus is one of the monitoring tools. Next, we will talk about Grafana. Grafana. This is also one of the monitoring tools. Next, I will talk about ELK stack. ELK stack. So this is also monitoring tool only. So these are 3 monitoring tools we are going to discuss: Prometheus, Grafana, and ELK stack. ELK stack is nothing but what? It is the combination of 3 open source products. What 3 open source products? E stands for Elasticsearch, L stands for Logstash, K stands for Kibana. Here ELK, in the ELK, E stands for Elasticsearch, L stands for Logstash, K stands for Kibana. Next, after completing these monitoring tools, I will talk about right. So Nexus. What is this Nexus? Nexus is the build artifactory repository. Build artifactory repository. Nexus is a build artifactory repository, guys. So then we will talk about Jira. Jira is what? It is project management tool. Jira is a project management tool. See guys, please have a look into these DevOps tools. What we are going to cover? First, we are going to understand introduction of the DevOps tools. Then we will understand as a DevOps engineer, what is your roles and responsibilities in the company. Then we will talk about Maven. What is Maven here? Maven is a build tool. Then I will talk about GitHub. GitHub is a source code repository tool. Then I will talk about Jenkins. Jenkins is a deployment tool. Here we are going to understand how to create the CI/CD pipelines. Then I will talk about SonarQube for code review purpose. Next, Tomcat as a web server, Docker as a containerization tool, Docker Swarm and Kubernetes as orchestration tools, Prometheus, Grafana, ELK stack as monitoring tools, Nexus as a build artifactory repository, and Jira as a project management tool. All these things we are going to cover in the DevOps. Guys, observe very carefully. Guys, in part 4, we are going to discuss. Part 3, we are going to discuss AWS Cloud. How many services we are going to cover? 20 plus services we are going to cover here. Here I have noted down all the services which we are going to discuss in the AWS Cloud. So then, right, so once AWS Cloud is completed, I will move to this DevOps tools. Here, how many services I am going to cover? 15 plus DevOps tools I am going to cover it here. Next, right, as part 5, we are going to discuss Python scripting. How much Python scripting knowledge is required for the DevOps engineers? Up to that level I am going to cover. Here we are going to discuss what is Python, right, who implemented this Python, and how to write the functions in the Python, how to write the conditions in the Python, how to write the loops, how to write the classes, everything we are going to discuss in the Python. Okay. Right guys, here what we are going to understand, Python scripting. How much Python scripting is required for the DevOps engineers? Up to that level I am going to cover. So then 5 real-time projects also we are going to discuss. Not 1 or 2 projects. 5 real-time projects we are going to discuss. What 5 real-time projects we are going to discuss at here? What 5 real-time projects? See guys, we are going to understand, right, one complete project by using Ansible. Right, project with Ansible. Project with Ansible we are going to discuss. Next, project with Terraform. Project with Terraform we are going to do one end-to-end project. Next, project with Jenkins and Docker. Project with Jenkins and Docker. Next guys, project with right, all monitoring tools. All monitoring tools we are going to cover one project. Next, project with Jenkins, right, GitHub, right, Nexus, Sonar, right, Docker, and Kubernetes. With all these things, we will do one project, guys. Guys, have a look into this. Right, in part 6, we are going to cover 5 real-time projects. What 5 real-time projects we are going to cover? See, guys. So these are the 5 real-time projects we are going to understand. One complete project on the Ansible, one complete project on the Terraform, one complete project on this Jenkins and Docker, right, complete project on all monitoring tools, right, project on Jenkins, GitHub, Nexus, Sonar, Docker, and Kubernetes. Okay, so once it is done, I will go for part 7. What we are going to discuss in part 7? What we are going to cover as part 7, guys? As I told, in the part 7, first we will understand how to prepare the resume. Resume preparation. Next is, right, how to keep the projects in the resume. How to keep the projects in the resume. Next, I will talk about how to explain your roles and responsibilities in the interviews. how to explain roles and responsibilities in the interviews. Next, we will talk about interview questions. Interview questions. Okay, so next we will talk about mock interviews, guys. We will conduct some mock interviews also. See guys, this is part 7, guys. Guys, observe carefully. Guys, tomorrow, once again, I will discuss about this course content only. Tomorrow, once again, I will discuss about course content. So what I will discuss in tomorrow's session, again, I will give overview of each and every service. I will give overview of each and every DevOps tools, guys. Right, what overview I will give? What is EC2? What we will do by using EC2 service? What is AMI? What we will do by using AMI? What is EBS? What we will do by using EBS? So like that, I will provide the overview of each and every service in tomorrow's session. In today's session, what I did, just I have noted down the complete course content which we are going to cover. Tomorrow also I will talk about this course content only, but tomorrow I will give the overview of these services and the tools. Overview of the services and tools, guys. Stephen, is it okay? Please respond on the chat box. Is it okay for you? So you ask an overview, right? That I will cover in tomorrow's session. Each and every service, each and every tool I will discuss in tomorrow's session, guys. Here, whatever I noted down about all these things, I will give brief overview also in tomorrow's session. Is it okay for you? Please then respond in chat box. Correct. Alright, guys. Guys, observe carefully. Right. First, here what I discussed, I have given brief introduction about myself. Myself, Raju, and I am having 12 plus years of working experience. Currently, I am working as a senior technical specialist. Right, in my company, I am working as Java full stack. Right, in the Java, in my project, what technology stack I am using? Right, all these things: Java, Spring Boot, microservices, React, DevOps, and AWS Cloud. Fine. So, coming to prerequisites of this course. Is there any prerequisites to attend for this course? Yes, we have, guys. We have. What is that? Linux commands. But even if you don't know the Linux commands, no problem. Even if you don't know the basics, even if you don't know the prerequisites, still no problem. Here we are going to understand Linux also. To attend for this DevOps with AWS Cloud, the main prerequisites is Linux commands. Even if you don't know the Linux commands, no problem. We are going to cover Linux also. Right? Observe carefully. Right? What is the prerequisites? What are the prerequisites? Which you should know to attend for this course? Linux commands. But here I mentioned as nothing. Why I mentioned as nothing? That Linux commands also we are going to cover. That's why I mentioned as nothing. Okay, so coming to course content, the entire course content I have divided into 7 parts. The entire course content I have divided into 7 parts. Guys, before going to attend for any course, any training, first you should understand the course content. You should know what you are going to learn. So then only please attend for the sessions, guys. Here, coming to course content, as part 1, we are going to discuss introduction of the DevOps. In this introduction part, we are going to cover what is DevOps, why DevOps, DevOps lifecycle, what is SDLC, what is methodologies are available, what is waterfall methodology, what is agile methodology. All these things we are going to cover as part 1. Next, Linux operating system and shell scripting. Here what we are going to discuss, what is operating system, what is Windows operating system, what is Linux operating system, Windows versus Linux, Linux commands and shell scripting. So these are things we are going to cover in part 2. So then come to part 3. What we are going to discuss in part 3, AWS Cloud. Guys, as I told, right, if you attend for DevOps with AWS Cloud in other institutes, they won't cover 20 plus services. You can check any one of your friends who are taking this course in other institutes, right? So how many AWS services they are covering in your institute. They will tell, "Arey, 5 services only, 6 services only." But here we are going to cover 20 plus AWS services. Even if you attend for only AWS cloud also, they won't cover these many number of services. But here with this DevOps with AWS cloud only, we are covering 20 plus AWS services. Here I have noted down what services we are going to cover in the AWS. Just now we discussed all these things. And coming to part 4, right, DevOps tools. How many DevOps tools we are going to discuss? 15 plus DevOps tools we are going to discuss at here. Here I have noted down all the 15 plus DevOps tools which we are going to cover. So then come to part 5. As part 5, we are going to understand Python scripting. Right? This Python scripting is mandatory for DevOps engineers. Right? Yes, guys. Right? In 2024. It is going to play a very key role in the DevOps area, guys. Python scripting is going to play very key role for the DevOps roles. So that's why Python scripting also very important for the DevOps engineer. Right? Am I going to cover complete Python? No, guys. For DevOps engineers, how much Python scripting is required? Up to that level, I am going to cover. Almost 10 to 15 hours I am going to spend on this Python scripting. So once part 5 is completed, I will come to part 6. This is very important part. Right? This is very important part. If you attend for part 6, then tomorrow in the companies you can work. Right? How 5 plus years of experience people are working. How 6 plus years of experience people are working. The same confident you also can work if you attend for this part 6. So you will get very high confidence after completing this part 6. We are going to discuss 5 real-time projects, not 1 or 2. 5 real-time projects we are going to understand here. So then I will come to part 7. Part 7 is interview guide. Here what we are going to discuss? Resume preparation. And here our content is very huge. Compared with other institutes, our course content is very high. So we need to keep each and everything properly in the resume. That's why I will take one separate session for the resume preparation and I will explain how to keep all these services and tools in the resume. Then I will talk about how to keep the projects in the resume. Not only mentioning the technologies and things. We need to keep the projects also in the resume. How to keep the projects in the resume also I will explain. Then I will talk about roles and responsibilities. As a DevOps engineer, you need to explain your roles and responsibilities in the interview. So that also we are going to understand. Next we will talk about interview questions. Right? So services wise, tools wise, we will discuss the interview questions also. Finally, we will conduct some mock interviews also. So like this, the entire course we have divided into 7 parts. What 7 parts are there? Introduction of the DevOps, Linux operating system and shell scripting, AWS cloud, right? DevOps tools, Python scripting, real-time projects, and interview guide. So these are the 7 parts which we are going to discuss in our course, guys. Guys, you can have a look into this. Right? Our course content is very high, guys. Very high. Okay, fine. Next, guys. Next, coming to class timings, guys. Tomorrow, once again, I will talk about this course content. I will explain. I will give overview of each and every service and each and every tool. Don't worry, guys. Tomorrow, again, I will talk about the course content only. Okay, fine. Coming to class timings, guys. Right here, daily class will start at 6 a.m. IST. Daily class will start every day. Morning class will start at 6 a.m. IST, guys. From 6 a.m. IST to till what time I will take the session, guys? 6 a.m. IST to 7 a.m. IST. Guys, as per Indian timings, daily class morning will start at 6 a.m. and it will completed by 7 a.m. IST, guys. 6 a.m. IST to 7 a.m. IST. Okay, class timing 6 a.m. IST to 7 a.m. IST, guys. Next, guys. Next here, right? So, mode of the class. What is the mode of the class, guys? Mode of the class, it is completely online. Online, guys. Mode of the class is online only. Right? Next, guys. Classes are available from Monday to Friday. 5 days only I am taking. Right? Monday to Friday, I will take the classes. Monday to Friday, 5 days, guys. Weekly, 5 days we have the classes. Right? So now class notes is available. Class notes is available, guys. Daily you will get the class notes. Guys, here class notes is very important. Class notes is very important. I am not going to download the class notes from anywhere. Right? So now how I have prepared this in front of you guys. How I have prepared this in front of you guys. Same way I will prepare the notes and I will share the notes once our class is completed. So daily you will get the class notes, guys. Okay? Class recordings also available, guys. Class recordings available. Class recordings are available with 1 year access. With 1 year access, guys. Okay, guys, have a look into this. Class timings 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. IST. Mode of the class online. Right, Monday to Friday classes are available. Class notes is available, and the class recordings also available with 1 year access. Okay, and here we will create 3 groups, guys. One is the WhatsApp group. Right, WhatsApp group we will create for doubts clarification and the class updates, guys. Right, class is there, or if any day due to some personal works, the class may be cancelled. At that time, such kind of updates we will provide in the WhatsApp group. And here we will create a Telegram group to share the class notes. In the Telegram group only, right, I will share the class notes. And here we have the Google Drive. Right, Google Drive access. And here I will share the class recordings. In the Google Drive, I will share the class recordings. Right, I will create these 3 groups also, guys. WhatsApp group, Telegram group, and Google Drive access, guys. Okay, is this clear, guys? Please respond. Course content is clear.
Yes, it's correct.
Right. If anyone, right, online people and some people are watching in the YouTube also, right, if you guys are interested and if you guys are right want to join for this course, here I am giving my WhatsApp number, guys. Please send one text message to this WhatsApp number. I will contact you. Right, here I am giving my WhatsApp number. Please note it down, this number, guys. 6362 34 5870. 6362345870. This is my WhatsApp number. If anybody have interest to attend for this course, just send one message to this WhatsApp number. I will contact you, guys. Okay, as I promised, right, our course content is very high. Here, whatever I mentioned, each and everything in detail, I am going to explain. Okay. So thank you, guys. I'm stopping for today. Tomorrow we have the session at same time, guys, 6 a.m. IST. What I'm going to cover in tomorrow's session? Tomorrow I will discuss, right, overview of each and every service, overview of each and every tool. I will discuss in the tomorrow session. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thanks for joining, guys. Tomorrow we will catch up. Thanks for joining. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.